There is no way Meghan Markle deserves to be at King Charles's funeral. That's not an opinion, it's a cry heard across the United Kingdom and far beyond, echoing from palace courtiers to everyday royal watchers. This is the same woman who accused the king, her father-in-law, of being a racist. And yet now, astonishingly, she and her children are being placed at the very center of Charles's most sacred final plans. This stunning revelation has split the royal world in two, reigniting a fierce debate about loyalty, legacy, and the limits of forgiveness. But before we unravel the full scale of this royal storm, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We break down the truth behind palace walls, the controversies the mainstream media won't touch, and the stories that shape royal history. Tap that subscribe button now and stay updated on everything they don't want you to know. Now back to the firestorm. It all started with the leak, one of those very rare, eyebrow-raising drops that come not from random tabloids but from the Daily Telegraph, the newspaper considered closest to the palace itself. The leak wasn't vague, it wasn't speculative. It was specific, strategic, and shocking. King Charles, still undergoing weekly cancer treatments, has begun planning his own funeral. Not unusual for a monarch. But what stunned everyone was the inclusion not just of Prince Harry, but of Meghan Markle, and even their children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Yes, the same Meghan who detonated bombshell after bombshell during the infamous Oprah interview. The same Meghan who painted the royal family as a cold, racist, emotionally abusive institution. The same Meghan whose relationship with her own father has crumbled in the public eye. That woman is now expected to play a prominent role in the funeral procession, stand vigil at Westminster Hall, and be presented once again as a royal family figurehead during the monarch's final moments. It's not just surprising, it's enraging for many. Commentators like Lee Cohen didn't hold back. "Not no. Hell no," he declared. "Those vile creatures must be forever marginalized." That quote went viral. Why? Because it speaks to a wider royal fatigue. A growing number of loyalists, insiders, and everyday citizens feel Charles is once again repeating the same mistake, offering olive branches to people who only respond by setting fire to the tree. Let's rewind. This wouldn't be the first time the royal family attempted a so-called reconciliation during a funeral. It failed miserably during Prince Philip's. It failed again during Queen Elizabeth II's. And here we are, gearing up for a third act, one that many argue will be just as fruitless, if not more damaging. At the heart of the outrage is a single idea. Why should Harry and Meghan, who have relentlessly torn down the monarchy from their California mansion, be handed front row roles at one of the most important ceremonial events in British history? Some will say, but Harry is the king's son. True, bloodlines matter, but what about loyalty? What about honor? What about the reality that Prince William, soon to be king himself, wants nothing to do with his brother anymore? Inside, sources claim that William has emotionally moved on. He has accepted that Harry is lost to him, and he has no interest in sharing sacred space with Meghan, especially not during a funeral that should unite the nation, not fracture it even further. And yet, Charles remains hopeful, perhaps too hopeful. According to reports, he sees his funeral as a final act of reconciliation, a grand theatrical gesture that might, in death, do what his life failed to achieve, bring his sons back together. But if living, breathing conversations didn't work, if private pleas, public apologies, and royal events failed, why on earth would a funeral succeed? Things are already tense. Let's not forget Harry's explosive BBC interview earlier this year, where he discussed his father's declining health. "I don't know how much longer my father has," Harry said, his voice trembling but not with grief. No. What followed was a bitter tirade about his own security needs, twisting a moment of potential unity into yet another jab at the very family he supposedly wants to reconnect with. That interview alone should have been enough to freeze Harry out permanently. But Charles, ever the sentimental monarch, still holds on to hope. And now that hope is literally embedded in his final legacy, his funeral plans. But is it noble or naive? Because the inclusion of Harry and Meghan doesn't just raise eyebrows, it raises stakes. It means putting a spotlight back on a couple who have made a career out of playing victim while cashing in on royal proximity. Netflix documentaries, memoirs, podcast deals, leaked private conversations, no line has gone uncrossed, no sacred bond unbroken. And yet, here we are again, watching the palace invite them back in, only this time. The entire world will be watching. Cameras, commentators, millions of eyes glued to the screens, wondering, is this a true moment of royal forgiveness or the ultimate royal mistake? But that's just the beginning. Asterisk. Behind the scenes, royal insiders are reportedly fuming. This isn't just about emotional betrayal anymore, it's about optics, security, and legacy. Meghan Markle and their children at the center of the ceremony is being seen by many as a dangerous gamble. According to the Daily Telegraph's royal deputy editor, and Meghan, the plans are not symbolic. They are active, detailed, and operational. If this report is accurate, then the Sussexes aren't being offered a courtesy invitation. They're being placed front and center. Prince Harry is expected to walk beside his brother in the royal procession through London. Meghan Markle is expected to participate in the royal vigil at Westminster Hall, and their children, who most of the world hasn't even seen in public, are being penciled into a global funeral broadcast. That's spotlight. And that's why critics are so outraged, because this inclusion isn't being seen as compassionate, it's being seen as delusion. A desperate attempt by a father to rewrite history, even as the ink dries on betrayal after betrayal. And let's not forget, this isn't ancient history. Just a few months ago, Harry and Meghan were still actively undermining the monarchy. Their Netflix docuseries made a mockery of palace tradition. Harry's memoir, Spare, called out his brother, stepmother, and even his own father in embarrassing detail. Meghan's public appearances are filled with carefully crafted digs and thinly veiled accusations. Yet here we are, watching the king attempt to sew the torn family tapestry back together with funeral thread. But if it didn't work for Elizabeth II and it didn't, why should it work now? Even more controversial is the idea that Archie and Lilibet would attend the funeral in such a visible ceremonial capacity. Critics say Charles has barely spent time with them. William reportedly has no relationship with them. The British public doesn't even recognize their faces. And yet, they are being offered front roles in an event watched by billions. Is this about family or fantasy? Because let's be honest, if Meghan Markle does show up, you can bet it won't be about honoring Charles. It'll be about reclaiming a seat at the royal table she blew up. Every camera flash, every curtsy, every side glance will be loaded with PR intent. She's been branded the Netflix Duchess for a reason. She knows how to use spectacle. And for many watching, the fear isn't that Meghan might attend. The fear is that she might turn the king's funeral into a Hollywood trailer for her next venture. And what about William? He has stayed silent, firm, unforgiving. According to insiders, he wants nothing to do with Harry. For William, the day he humiliated Queen Camilla, the day he turned the family's private grief into headline fodder, to expect William to put all of that aside during his father's funeral? Unfair, and many believe Charles is making a monumental mistake by putting that burden on his heir, Brittany from the Royal News Network put it bluntly. The only thing Meghan has ever wanted from Charles is money. And while harsh, that sentiment is echoed by many across the UK. Because what has Meghan given to the royal family except controversy, legal headaches, and relentless public shaming? The idea that this funeral might be used as a stage for a final PR redemption arc is too many offensive. And yet Charles, in his unwavering optimism, seems to believe that death will do what diplomacy could not. That somehow, by involving Harry and Meghan in his last public act, he can heal a wound that's been torn open again and again. But Meghan's track record tells a different story. She has shown again and again. Her obsession with image has, in many eyes, surpassed any desire for genuine family connection. Even her carefully staged royal appearances, complete with exaggerated curtsies and theatrical expressions, come across as disingenuous to critics. And as for the children, the speculation grows louder. Why are they being introduced to the public now? Why not at family events prior? Why during the funeral of a monarch they barely knew? To Catherine and William's children, because Catherine and William show up authentically. Their children behave like children, but they also reflect the care and presence of their parents. If Meghan's carefully crafted public persona were to crumble under the reality of a chaotic toddler tantrum at a royal event, a risk Meghan has never seemed willing to take until now. When cameras and stakes are at their highest, and the question that lingers is this truly about family or about legacy manipulation? The deeper you go into this story, the more it begins to feel like a desperate PR exercise dressed up as royal duty. King Charles is reportedly determined to show the world that he is a unifier monarch above bitterness and beyond division, but even his most loyal supporters are asking, at what cost? Let's not forget what happened after Queen Elizabeth's funeral. Harry and Meghan left the UK feeling more ostracized than ever. And that wasn't because they were unfairly treated. It was because they expected to be treated like senior royals, despite having given up their roles, bashed the family publicly, and monetized their titles. When reality didn't meet expectation, they ran back to America and cried foul. That's not unity. That's delusion. Now Charles wants to repeat the cycle, even grander, at his own funeral. And according to the Telegraph, Meghan, Harry, Archie, and Lilibet will be given prominent roles throughout the entire affair, from the solemn Westminster procession to the committal service at St. George's Chapel. That means public appearances, official seating, briefings, rehearsals, even a vigil. Let that sink in. A woman who once told Oprah Winfrey that the royal family made her feel so unsupported she considered harming herself. Now, being invited to stand in uniformed ceremony alongside the very people she accused, and make no mistake, the public hasn't forgotten those accusations. They haven't forgotten the whispers about what color the baby's skin might be. They haven't forgotten the institution framing her pain as inconvenient. Meghan and Harry opened that Pandora's box, and now it appears Charles wants to pretend none of it ever happened. Royal insiders are calling this the most reckless move of Charles's reign because, once he's gone, it's Prince William who will have to deal with the fallout. And William isn't playing games. Sources close to the Prince of Wales say he views the rift with Harry as permanent, irreparable, not because he doesn't care, but because Harry crossed the point of no return. The Netflix series alone was reportedly devastating for William, who was blindsided by the footage, the accusations, the narrative manipulation. Meghan and Harry didn't just burn bridges, they built a bonfire on top of them. Now imagine asking William to walk shoulder to shoulder with that man in front of the entire world, while grieving his father. And it's not just about family politics, it's about control. Every element of a royal funeral is choreographed. Every facial expression, every step, every nod is examined by the media, dissected by commentators, and judged by millions. Meghan knows that she thrives in that environment, and critics say she's likely to use the occasion to reframe herself once again as misunderstood, reformed, gracious, the queen who never was, but always wanted to be seen as. That's why the inclusion of the Sussex children is sparking such backlash, because many believe this isn't about honoring Charles's final wishes, it's about using his funeral to remind the world, we're still royals, even after the betrayals, even after the exiles. They're still attempting to project legitimacy, to stand next to William and Kate and say, we belong here too. But the British public doesn't see it that way. Poll after poll has shown that Meghan and Harry's approval ratings in the UK have tanked. Meghan, in particular, is viewed with deep skepticism, if not outright hostility. Many see her as the architect of the royal implosion. And while Harry still retains some sympathy, it's dwindling fast with every new interview, every new memoir, page, every public tantrum about security or protocol. Charles's plan, noble as it may seem, is dangerously out of step with reality. Because reconciliation, true reconciliation, requires accountability. And that's something Harry and Meghan have never shown. Not once. They've never publicly apologized. Never acknowledged the pain their words and actions have caused. Never owned up to the damage done not just to the monarchy, but to Charles personally. Instead, they've doubled down, painted themselves as victims, and continued to profit from a system they claim to despise. And now, they're being rewarded with royal roles at the funeral of the man they dragged through the mud. It's a contradiction, so glaring it borders on absurd. Even the BBC, once accused of bias toward Meghan and Harry, was forced to acknowledge the hypocrisy in Harry's latest interview. He spoke about his father's health in vague, emotional terms only to pivot into a complaint about not being contacted over security. That's not grief, that's grievance. And it perfectly encapsulates the Sussex's brand of public relations. Always the misunderstood underdogs, never the accountable adults. For Charles, including them may feel like a final act of grace. But for the rest of the royal family, especially William, it feels like betrayal. So what happens next? Will the public accept this grand gesture of forgiveness? Or will they see it for what many believe it is, one last misguided attempt to heal a wound that refuses to close? As the royal funeral plans continue to make headlines, one thing is clear. King Charles is walking a tightrope, one that risks fracturing public trust in the monarchy even further. His determination to place Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their children at the symbolic heart of the event might come from a place of love, but in the cold light of reality, it feels like a miscalculation, because once Charles is gone, this burden falls on William. And William is not his father. He has made no secret of the fact that he's done with Harry. No secret of his loyalty to the institution, to duty, and to the firm belief that actions have consequences. The idea that William would embrace a reconciliation born not from healing, but from obligation, is as unrealistic as it is unfair. Brittany from Royal News Network summed it up best. If Harry and Meghan want true reconciliation, they'd have to come back on their knees, with real apologies, and a willingness to stop profiting off their grievances. But we all know that's not going to happen, because Meghan doesn't want back in unless it benefits her. And Harry? He still seems trapped between two worlds, one where he wants to be the misunderstood son of a wounded father, and another where he refuses to acknowledge the damage he's done. His memoir, his interviews, his lawsuits, they all point to a man who wants the crown's protection without any of the accountability that comes with it. And yet, Charles is building him a stage anyway. For many, the very idea of involving Archie and Lilibet in such a sacred event is the final straw. These are children who've been raised away from the public, far from royal traditions, with parents who've repeatedly stated they want nothing to do with royal duties. So why now? Why insert them into the heart of a monarchy they've never served and barely known? Is it for legacy? For photos? For PR? Because it certainly isn't for continuity. The monarchy's future lies with William, Catherine, and their children, not Harry and Meghan, not California, not Montecito, and certainly not Netflix. Still, Charles seems to believe that his funeral might achieve something that decades of diplomacy and family meetings could not. A single image, an image of unity, of his sons walking side by side, of grandchildren honoring their grandfather, of a family once broken, appearing whole if only for a moment. But will that image be real or staged? The truth is, the funeral may be the final curtain, not just for King Charles's life, but for the Sussexes linked to the royal core. Because after that, there will be no more excuses, no more attempts at olive branches, no more secret briefings, reconciliations, or strategic invitations. William will be king, and as king, he is expected to protect the crown, not appease those who abandoned it. And let's be brutally honest here, this inclusion may not be an act of mercy, but a quiet maneuver to control the narrative one last time. A funeral is not a family reunion. It's a ceremonial moment of national importance, steeped in tradition and symbolism. To treat it like a PR rehab tour for Meghan and Harry is not only tone-deaf, it's an insult to the very institution Charles has spent a lifetime serving. If the Sussexes wanted redemption, they had years to earn it. They had opportunities to mend relationships, to show humility, to apologize not just to Charles and William, but to the British people. But they didn't. Instead, they wrote tell-all books, sold intimate secrets, exposed private conversations, dragged the monarchy through media mud for attention and cash. Now, at the 11th hour, Charles may be opening the doors to them one last time. But if history has shown us anything, it's that Meghan and Harry don't walk through doors quietly. They kick them open, turn on the cameras, and sell the footage to the highest bidder. So yes, they may attend the funeral. They may walk in the procession. They may stand at Westminster. But make no mistake, for millions of royal watchers around the world, the monarchy has already turned the page. Charles's final gesture might be made in good faith, but William's reign will begin with a very different tone. And this funeral, it might just be the last time Harry and Meghan are invited to stand beside the family they once belonged to. So, what do you think? Should King Charles include Meghan and Harry in his funeral plans? Is this the act of a father hoping for peace, or a monarch undermining the very institution he vowed to protect? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown powerful, insightful, or even just brutally honest, subscribe to our channel now. Hit that bell icon so you never miss a royal controversy, a leaked detail, or a whispered palace scandal. We bring you the real, uncensored, and unapologetic. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep questioning the crown, **.